Trapped in the vice of Israel's criminal blockade, Hamas desperately endeavored to carve out a path to normalcy. It tried diplomacy.
Right, and now read what I said.
A 2009 study by a US government agency concluded that Hamas had been carefully and consciously adjusting its political program for years and had sent repeated signals that it might be ready to begin a process of coexisting with Israel.
Exactly. That's what I wrote. It said it was ready to begin a process of coexisting with Israel. It was never given a chance. I don't know what would have happened if they were at the negotiating table and whether or not Hamas would have budged on the question of the right of return. I don't know. It's a hard question for them. You know why? It's very simple. Their base is in Gaza, and 70% of the people in Gaza are refugees from 1948 or their children or their descendants. So it's very tough to give up on that right where your constituency is overwhelmingly the refugees. So it's a hard sell for them. I don't know what would have happened. What I do know for sure happened was nobody was willing to negotiate with them. Nobody was willing to give them a chance. In fact, what did Israel do? Israel then launched Operation Cast Lead. It launched Operation Cast Lead. A ceasefire had been signed with Gaza in June 2008. Even the Israeli sources state the ceasefire was holding up. Who broke the ceasefire? Israel broke the ceasefire on November 5th. Israel went into Gaza and killed a half dozen militants.
I want to go back to the diplomacy, just to keep on to the question, diplomacy. You said that they said they adjusting their political program to, potentially look at a peace solution. Did they ever say that they're willing to do a two-state solution?
There were many indications. I can't go through the whole record now. I was surprised because after October 7th, some researchers who I work with started going through the whole record, and there was one after another indication by Hamas that it was willing to negotiate either a final solution to the question, a final settlement, or what they called a hudna, a 20-year HUDNA, a 20-year peace agreement with Israel. There were many possibilities, and if a person wants peace, what do? They test the possibilities to see what may and may not work. Israel or the United States and the United States were unwilling. They demanded complete capitulation by Hamas, which was the elected government. Remember, when the elections occurred in January 2006, Hamas didn't want to participate because it felt that the elections were part of what it called the Oslo process, and it didn't want to have anything to do with the Oslo Agreement of September 1993 because it thought that it was a capitulation by the Palestinians. It was exhorted to participate. And then it was President Bush who insisted on the elections. Because that was the era, again, you're way too young to remember, it was the era of what was called democracy promotion after the Gulf War. And so they were exhorted to participate, and they won the elections. So what? They're not allowed to take power after they won the election? And they were willing to negotiate. The record is clear on that. How the negotiations would have gone, I can't predict that.
So,
but
because
What?
Because just to look at it, because you mentioned they put out like they're saying they're potentially willing to do peace. From an Israeli perspective, they see in Hamas's original charter where they say they want a one-state solution and they say they want to kill Jews. And
right, that charter was superseded already in 2017 by what was called a political document. You know, I'm sorry to have to age myself at your expense, but I remember, I am old enough to remember when they constantly tried to discredit all of the PLO's peace initiatives by saying, what about the PLO charter? What about the PLO charter? Well, you know what? Nobody in the PLO had even read that charter after so many years. The PLO charter was from 1968. Nobody even read it, but they kept dragging it out to make excuses for why not to negotiate. There was perfect grounds to negotiate. Yeah, did the Soviet Union have to renounce the Communist Manifesto in order to negotiate with the West? When there were the nuclear test ban treaties that were signed with the Soviet Union, and the intercontinental ballistic missile treaties, and the anti-missile treaties that were signed with the U.S., was a condition for signing them that they had to denounce the Communist Manifesto? Isn't that just a completely idiotic argument? No country is obliged to renounce its founding document. The question is whether they're willing to negotiate an end to the conflict.